Mallory Kline was the kind of person everyone noticed. Bright, kind, always the first to offer help during a crisis at the hospital. Elias Grant, Theo Klein, and Nathan Rourke were the type no one did. Quiet college students with clean records and brilliant minds, hiding something far darker beneath their calm exteriors. No one in Cypress Falls could have imagined that Mallory's path would cross with theirs in a way so brutal, so calculated, it would expose one of the most disturbing underground networks law enforcement had ever seen. What happened to her wasn't a random act of violence. It was scripted, filmed, and watched. And it was only the beginning. Mallory Kline had never been the kind of person to make headlines. She wasn't famous, wasn't notorious, and had no enemies that anyone knew of. She lived a quiet life in the sleepy town of Cypress Falls, a place known more for its autumn festivals and quiet lakes than any sort of danger. She was 26, studying to become a registered nurse, and just 3 months away from graduation. Her days were a mix of clinical hours at the local hospital, long study sessions, and texting back and forth with her roommate Tara about what they'd eat for dinner or which Netflix show to binge next. Friday, October 3rd, started like any other day. Mallory left the hospital just before 6 p.m., exhausted but happy to have her weekend free. The weather had shifted that day. Gray clouds rolled. And by noon, and by evening, a steady rain had begun to fall. She sent Tara a quick message. "Heading back soon, just need gas. Want anything?" It was the kind of casual message sent 1,000 times before, the kind you never think will be the last. Surveillance footage from the gas station confirmed her arrival around 6:18 p.m. Mallory, wearing navy scrubs and a green windbreaker, pumped gas, grabbed a bottle of water from the mini-mart, and returned to her silver Honda Civic. Nothing unusual happened. No one approached her. No one followed her, at least not on any camera that police could find. She pulled out of the station at 6:27 p.m. and turned west toward her apartment. That stretch of road should have taken her 10 minutes. She never arrived. When Tara realized Mallory hadn't come home by 8 p.m., she wasn't alarmed at first. She assumed Mallory had stopped somewhere, or maybe decided to visit her parents, who lived about 30 minutes away. But by 10 p.m., calls to Mallory's phone were going straight to voicemail. Tara called again at midnight, then again at 1 a.m. Still nothing. By morning, panic had fully set in. The police were called just before 7 a.m., Saturday morning. Officers initially treated the case as a possible misunderstanding. Maybe she had run off with someone, gone somewhere on impulse. After all, there was no sign of foul play. But those who knew Mallory insisted she wasn't the kind of person to vanish. She didn't drink heavily. She didn't party. She had classes. Monday morning and a clinical exam on Tuesday she'd been stressing about all week. Nothing in her life suggested she would disappear on purpose. By midday Saturday, her car was found. It was parked at the edge of a gravel turnoff known as Hollow Creek Trail, just 6 miles from the gas station. It was a remote area, rarely used outside of hiking season, which had already passed. The car doors were locked. The keys were in the ignition. Her phone, bag, and hospital ID badge were still in the passenger seat. There were no signs of a struggle. No broken glass, no drag marks, no blood. It looked as if she had simply parked, stepped out, and never returned. Detectives canvassed the area, but no one had seen her. The trail cameras in the area were all offline, vandalized months earlier and never repaired. Dogs were brought in. Helicopters flew overhead. Volunteers from town searched in organized lines, calling her name over and over again. But with each passing hour, the odds of finding her alive began to shrink. What had begun as a missing person case now felt much more ominous. The media picked up the story by Sunday evening. Mallory's photo was everywhere. Local news, Facebook pages, digital billboards donated by community members. Her smile was frozen in time, a hospital badge hanging from her neck, the kind of image meant to convey innocence and hope. But hope was fading. In quiet moments, her friends admitted it. So did the officers behind closed doors. Something about her disappearance felt deliberate, too clean, too fast. Then came the first twist. Around 9 p.m. Sunday night, an anonymous 911 call came in. A man's voice, calm but clipped, said simply, "You're looking in the wrong place. She wasn't taken from the car." That was all. The call was traced to a burner phone, discarded in a dumpster behind a grocery store across town. The voice had used a voice changer app. It was impossible to trace. But it sent shivers down everyone's spine. Whoever made the call knew something, and that changed everything. Investigators re-examined the gas station footage and the area surrounding the road Mallory should have taken. Still no sign of another vehicle, but when they reviewed cell tower data, they found something strange. Her phone had pinged 2 additional towers after she left the gas station, both north of where her car was found. One at 6:41 p.m. and the last at 6:58 p.m. That meant she had been traveling in a different direction after leaving the station. The location where her car was found had to be a dump site, not the place of the actual crime. It was then that police realized they weren't dealing with a random disappearance. This was planned. Precise. Whoever had taken her knew the area well, knew how to avoid cameras, and had likely stalked her in advance. As investigators looked into her recent days, another strange detail emerged. Mallory had mentioned to a coworker that she felt like someone had been following her. She hadn't been sure, just a gut feeling, she said. She thought maybe it was just nerves from working night shifts. But now that offhand comment felt like a warning no one had heard in time. By Monday morning, the FBI was called in. Search efforts expanded. Mallory's family was flown in from Ohio. A $25,000 reward was announced for any information leading to her safe return. But the leads were few. The calls dried up. And then, as quickly as the case had captured attention, it began to chill. Days passed, then weeks. But for everyone in Cypress Falls, time had frozen on that rainy Friday evening. A girl had vanished without a trace. The rain that night had washed away more than just footprints. It had buried the truth. Until nearly a week later, someone stumbled on a barn, a place no one was supposed to find. And in that barn, the nightmare truly began. The barn sat deep in the woods, hidden behind a wall of trees so thick it nearly swallowed the narrow dirt trail leading to it. Most people in Cypress Falls didn't even know it existed. It hadn't been used in decades and belonged to a forgotten property tied up in an estate dispute no one had touched in years. It would have remained lost to time if not for a hunter named Eli Morton, who was walking those woods early Tuesday morning, looking for deer tracks after a night of light rain. Eli had been tracking a buck through thick underbrush when he caught a strange scent, something acrid and metallic. Not the smell of decay, but something colder, chemical. As he moved closer, the trees parted just enough to reveal the outline of the barn, its wooden slats weathered gray, the roof sagging from rot. At first, Eli didn't think much of it. Old barns were scattered all over the county, but this one had tire tracks leading to it, fresh ones, visible even in the damp mud. Curious and uneasy, Eli approached the barn. The heavy doors were slightly ajar, enough for the wind to whistle through and send a long creak echoing into the woods. Pushing them open, he stepped inside, expecting dust and raccoons. Instead, he found something else entirely. The air inside. The barn was cold and stale, but not empty. It reeked of bleach and rust. Light spilled in from a cracked window, casting long shadows across the dirt floor. In the center of the space stood a metal chair, bolted to a wooden platform. Thick restraints were attached to the arms and legs. Beside it lay a roll of duct tape, half-used, and several discarded pairs of latex gloves. Against the far wall, a tall floodlight had been set up, its bulb shattered on the ground. And just beneath it, a dark stain in the dirt that didn't match the rest of the floor. Eli didn't stay long. He backed out slowly, keeping his eyes on the chair as he fumbled for his phone and called 911. When police arrived, they sealed off the area immediately. The barn was no longer a forgotten structure. It was now a crime scene. Investigators swept the building, carefully cataloging everything. The stain on the ground tested positive for blood. Not just a few drops, but a pool soaked into the soil beneath the wooden base. Samples were taken for DNA testing. The gloves, though wiped down, still held faint traces of hair and fiber. Forensics teams moved in fast, careful not to disturb anything more than necessary. What they found was more than disturbing. It was methodical. The setup wasn't random. It had been carefully arranged, with attention to angles, lighting, and visibility. The floodlight had been positioned directly above the chair. A camera tripod was discovered in the loft above, hidden behind loose boards, perfectly aligned with the center of the room. Whoever had used this place wasn't acting on impulse. They had planned for this, prepared, and then scrubbed it down in a hurry. There were signs of a rushed cleanup, bleach stains on the wooden walls, footprints overlapping. In the dust, boot prints leading in and out. But even the best cleanups leave traces. Forensics lifted partial shoe impressions, consistent with 3 different sizes, likely 3 individuals, all wearing different brands. They had worked fast, but not fast enough. Still, there were no obvious personal items. No discarded phone, no wallet, no cigarette butts. Whoever had brought Mallory Kline here had stripped the place of anything that could tie it to them. Except for one thing. A length of white cord, looped and knotted in a distinct way. It was tucked beneath the edge of the chair platform, not visible at first glance. It had likely fallen unnoticed during the cleanup. It was the first piece of real evidence. Back at the lab, DNA tests confirmed what everyone feared. The blood in the barn belonged to Mallory Kline. The cord contained fibers matching the type found on the seat of her car. Investigators were no longer working a missing person case. They were now searching for a murderer. The news broke the next day. Evidence suggests missing nurse was held in remote barn, the headlines read. The town of Cypress Falls, already shaken, went silent. Candlelight vigils began popping up. Ribbons were tied to telephone poles. Mallory's family, still clinging to hope, flew in again for meetings with police. The sheriff gave few details, but confirmed foul play. Behind closed doors, the mood had shifted. No longer was it just about finding her. It was about finding out what had been done to her. Detectives tried to trace the tire marks leading to the barn, but the tracks were already blurred by rain. Security cameras on nearby roads hadn't picked up anything. The access trail was too far off-grid. Even drone footage turned up nothing useful. They were dealing with someone who knew the landscape and how to avoid surveillance. A canvass of nearby properties led them to speak with several locals, but no one reported seeing anything suspicious. The barn was technically part of the old Franklin estate, abandoned since the early 2000s. No electricity, no plumbing, no reason for anyone to be there. The fact that someone had chosen it, cleaned it up, and used it without being noticed was chilling. It suggested familiarity with the land, and possibly a local connection. Then came another clue. While sifting through the debris in the barn, a crime scene tech discovered something wedged between two floorboards. A small broken memory card, the kind used in DSLR cameras. It was damaged, partially melted, as if someone had tried to destroy it. But the data inside wasn't completely lost. Forensic experts managed to recover a single partial video file. No audio, no timestamp, just shaky footage showing the chair in the barn, floodlight beaming down, and something blurred out, deliberately smeared or blocked digitally. The file ended after a few seconds. It wasn't much, but it confirmed a terrifying truth. Mallory's time in the barn had been filmed. The video was leaked within 24 hours, likely by someone inside the investigation. The footage circulated in certain online forums before being pulled down, but not before it caught the attention of someone far outside the community, someone watching closely. An anonymous user posted a cryptic message under one of the video links. This wasn't the first. That was the moment the case widened beyond anything Cypress Falls had ever dealt with. Mallory wasn't just the victim of a single brutal act. She might be one of many. The barn wasn't just a crime scene. It was a pattern, and someone was watching the investigation unfold, daring the police to find them. 3 days after the discovery of the barn, a strange email arrived in the inbox of the lead detective on Mallory Kline's case. It had no subject line, no sender name, just a single line of text and a link. You missed something. Try deeper. It didn't make sense at first. Investigators had already swept the barn thoroughly, twice. Every inch had been scanned for fingerprints, blood spatter, hair, fibers. But the message didn't seem like a bluff. It felt pointed, like a test. Digital forensics traced the email to a dead-end proxy, bouncing through 3 foreign servers before disappearing entirely. Someone had gone to a lot of effort to remain hidden. That same day, during a deeper sweep of the barn's loft, crime scene technicians uncovered a compartment behind a false wall panel. It wasn't visible from below and had been built into the decaying structure. Inside was a small, fireproof lockbox. When pried open, it revealed an external hard drive, still intact, still functioning. What they found on it changed the case entirely. There were 6 video files, all encrypted with numerical file names and no descriptions. Once decrypted, the footage revealed high-definition recordings of someone being restrained in the barn, multiple angles edited together, the chair, the restraints, the same floodlight. At first, it was hard to tell who the victim was. Their face was partially obscured, and much of the footage was carefully framed to avoid identifying the captors. But the final video, time-stamped from the night Mallory disappeared, left no doubt. The camera had captured the full extent of her captivity, time-stamped and organized down to the minute. There was no sound, only the visual horror of what she endured over nearly 4 hours. The captors never appeared in full view. One wore a black mask, the others hooded. Their movements were clinical, deliberate, not erratic, not impulsive. They had done this before. There was no demand for ransom, no message. It wasn't about money. It wasn't personal. It was spectacle, a performance for an unseen audience. Investigators were stunned, not just by the brutality, but by the production quality. Multiple cameras, synchronized lighting, careful edits. They weren't dealing with amateurs. This was organized, structured, intentional in its cruelty, and someone had gone to great lengths to preserve it. News of the videos was kept under wraps. If the public knew what had really happened in that barn, the panic would be uncontrollable. But it was already too late to contain it fully. 2 days after the discovery, a clip, only 20 seconds long, surfaced on a private message board known for hosting disturbing and illegal content. It was uploaded by a user going by the handle MerkSystem17. The clip was from the second video on the drive. It showed the chair, the light, a figure restrained and flinching beneath blinding white glare. Again, no faces, no sound, but the setting matched perfectly. The barn was instantly identifiable. Mallory's case had already gained attention, and now online sleuths were connecting the dots. Comments poured in, theories exploded, Reddit threads multiplied overnight. The story had escaped law enforcement control. Still, there was a trace of hope. Metadata on the clip revealed something unexpected, a GPS tag. Somehow, during the conversion of the file, an embedded location marker had survived. It pointed to a small rural community 30 miles northeast of Cypress Falls, near a town called Woodgrove. The FBI moved in immediately. The area was mostly farmland with scattered homes and large stretches of unmanaged land. But one location matched both the GPS coordinates and the topographical features seen in the video. A rundown property that had once been used as a boarding house, but was now listed as vacant. The owner, a woman in her 80s, had been in a nursing home for years. But according to records, the basement of the house had been rented for the last 6 months to 3 local college students attending nearby Halberton College. Their names were Elias Grant, Nathan Rourke, and Theo Klein, ages 21 to 23. All 3 lived quiet lives, studied engineering and design, and had no prior criminal records. Nothing about them stood out, on paper. But when agents raided the property, the truth began to surface. The basement was soundproofed, the windows blacked out. What appeared from the outside to be a modest living space was, in fact, a well-constructed filming setup. A camera track was mounted to the ceiling. Professional microphones were boxed and labeled. A whiteboard outlined a sequence of actions, labeled Session 7, Final Trial. Beneath it was a list of numbers, dates. The last date matched the night Mallory vanished. One of the walls was covered in a corkboard with printed photos and notes. Most had been taken from public social media accounts, but some were clearly personal, invasive. Mallory's photo was there, circled in red ink. Her class schedule, her hospital shifts, surveillance stills, notes about her movements, when she parked, where she shopped, what time she walked her dog. They had been watching her for weeks. Laptops recovered from the room contained access logs to encrypted dark web forums. One in particular, Echo Room, had threads discussing real pain art and voluntary viewings. The phrasing was coded, hidden behind layers of euphemisms and jargon. But it was clear what was happening. This was not just the work of 3 disturbed students. They were participants in something larger, a network. When questioned, All three denied everything. They requested lawyers. Not a single confession was made in the first 48 hours. But then something broke. Digital forensics found a deleted file in Theo Klein's laptop's cache, a single frame from a video not yet released. It showed Mallory's hand. Her wrist bore a small tattoo that confirmed her identity. In the frame, her fingers clutched at the restraint. Underneath one of her fingernails, barely visible, was a smear of blood not belonging to her. The techs knew what to do. DNA testing matched the blood to Elias Grant. The moment the match was confirmed, Grant cracked. He confessed to everything. How they had found her, how they had followed her, how they had chosen the barn for its isolation. He didn't try to justify it. He spoke plainly, as if reading from a script, giving times and dates, movements and plans. He even described how they had celebrated afterward, driving her car to Hollow Creek Trail, planting it as a decoy, then returning to the house to begin editing the footage. But there was one final chilling revelation. Mallory had not been the first. 2 previous victims were referenced in Elias's confession, both from out of state, both never reported missing. The videos were stored off-site, he claimed, on a cloud server only Nathan could access. When police raided Nathan Rourke's locker, at school they found the login credentials. The server contained dozens of folders, some empty, some labeled with names. Only 3 contained videos. One of them was named simply M. Klein. Now there was no denying the truth. Mallory Kline had been targeted, hunted, tortured, filmed. Her suffering shared with people who saw it as nothing more than entertainment. But the most terrifying part wasn't what had happened. It was the list of other folders, untouched, unaccessed, each labeled with a name. Some were local, some weren't, and a few, investigators realized with dread, were still alive. The house on the edge of Woodgrove was quiet when agents returned to search it again, this time with an even more focused purpose. The folders on the cloud server, dozens of them, neatly named, some with only partial data, had shifted the case from the grim and horrifying to something even more chilling. This wasn't about one girl. It wasn't even about 3. It was about a system, one carefully hidden behind ordinary faces and everyday routines. Inside the house, agents tore apart the basement layer by layer. Behind the drywall, they found hidden wiring leading to a backup generator system. In one corner of the room, beneath a loose floorboard, lay a plastic container wrapped in tarps. Inside were 2 additional hard drives. These contained even more footage, most of it raw, unedited, unorganized. Some clips were only seconds long, like test shots or lighting checks. But a few were full recordings, captured in what appeared to be other locations. A storage unit, an abandoned garage, even what looked like the inside of a basement bathroom. Different victims, different chairs, the same routine. One particular video, dated 6 months before Mallory's disappearance, showed a woman with dyed red hair, her face never clearly shown. Investigators cross-referenced missing persons reports from that time and narrowed it down to a potential match. Cara Delaney, 22, reported missing from a city 4 hours away. Her case had gone cold within 2 weeks. No leads, no suspects. Now, her fate was confirmed in a 49-minute video buried in a forgotten drive. The revelation tore through law enforcement channels like wildfire. A task force was assembled within. 24 hours combining FBI agents, digital forensic experts, and analysts with experience in human trafficking and cybercrime. This case had officially crossed into something far larger than the quiet streets of Cypress Falls or the sleepy community of Woodgrove. They were dealing with a network, an operation that thrived on secrecy, precision, and anonymity. Elias Grant's confession had cracked the door open. But it was Theo Klein's silence that kept it from swinging fully. Theo refused to speak after his arrest. Not a word. Not during processing. Not during initial hearings. His lawyer claimed he was in shock, unable to speak clearly. But behind that silence there was calculation. Investigators knew he was holding back something, possibly access keys, administrator credentials, or contact information for others involved. Then came a discovery no one had expected. While combing through Theo's college-issued tablet, forensic techs found fragments of encrypted messages between him and someone listed only as V. These weren't ordinary texts. They were sent through an app designed to self-destruct after reading, buried in a fake calculator program that masked its true function. But partial screenshots had been saved automatically in Theo's Cloud Sync folder, a mistake he hadn't realized. The messages referenced Mallory before she had even been taken. Lines like, "She fits the profile," and "Friday 6:30 barn." Site Primed confirmed what investigators had feared. This was planned weeks in advance. It also confirmed that Theo and Elias hadn't worked alone. There was someone else, someone who called themselves V, and who appeared to be orchestrating things from the shadows. Efforts to trace the messages led nowhere. The app's servers were hosted overseas, protected by shell companies and buried in layers of digital protection. But a single clue stood out, a thumbnail preview of a profile picture associated with V. It was nothing more than a black square with a faint red circle in the center, seemingly meaningless, until analysts realized it matched the watermark on the leaked video that had appeared online after Mallory's death. Someone was branding the footage. Someone was curating it. The question now wasn't just who V was how many people were like him. Agents revisited the list of folders from the cloud server. A few had already been matched to known missing persons cases. Others were more ambiguous. One folder contained only images, surveillance photos taken in parking lots, grocery stores, public libraries. None of the people photographed had been reported missing. Yet, investigators identified several of the individuals and began quietly reaching out. In at least 2 cases, the women said they had noticed something strange in the past month. A car parked near their apartment too often, a package delivered to their name they hadn't ordered, a strange man asking questions at their place of work, subtle signs, small enough to ignore. Until now, they had been marked, cataloged, watched. Police moved fast to provide protection. Those individuals were placed under surveillance, and their daily routines were altered. A few were relocated temporarily. The task force knew the network was still active. Mallory's death hadn't been the final act. It had been part of a sequence, one session in a pattern that was only growing more complex. Meanwhile, attention turned toward Nathan Rourke. Unlike the other two, Nathan had gone completely off the grid in the days before the arrest. When agents raided the house, he wasn't there. His phone had last pinged a cell tower 4 towns away, and since then, he had vanished. Authorities believed he was still in the state, possibly using forged identification. Tips began flooding in. A man matching his description had been seen hitchhiking. Another report claimed he had rented a room under a fake name at a roadside motel. Then a backpack was found in the woods 20 miles from Woodgrove. Inside were burner phones, a map with certain locations circled, including Hollow Creek Trail, and a hardbound journal filled with handwritten notes. The contents were alarming. There were sketches of rooms, descriptions of lighting angles, technical diagrams for soundproofing, and most disturbing of all, scripts. They were written like plays, with actions detailed step by step. Subject: enters, lights on, camera 1 begins, resistance encouraged, audio off. There were 6 of them, each labeled with a different name. Mallory was number 5. The journal also referenced someone called Curator, not V, not Elias or Theo. A new name, no context, just that one word, written over and over again in the margins of multiple pages. Whatever the hierarchy was in this operation, Curator seemed to be above all of them. By now, the case was drawing national attention. News outlets were picking up pieces of the story, even as authorities tried to keep the full scale of the horror under wraps. Online communities began speculating wildly. Was this a cult? A black market operation? Some kind of dark art movement? But the truth was simpler and far more terrifying. This was about control, power, the illusion of normalcy masking deep cruelty, and the fact that 3 college students, seemingly harmless, even awkward, had been the front-facing operatives, proved how well the network could hide. As the investigation pressed on, the question lingered. How many more Mallorys were out there? How many names on that list were already lost? And how close was the curator to choosing his next subject? Because one thing was certain now. Mallory's case hadn't ended the operation. It had only exposed the beginning. As the investigation into Mallory Kline's death deepened, it became clear that her case wasn't an isolated tragedy. It was the thread that, once pulled, began to unravel a much larger tapestry of horror. The files found in the basement of the Woodgrove house, the encrypted server folders, and the chilling scripts in the journal pointed to something far more organized and deeply rooted than anyone had anticipated. And in the center of it all was a ghost, someone known only as the Curator. The Curator wasn't mentioned often in the recovered messages, just brief, scattered references, sometimes a name signed at the bottom of a planning note, other times alluded to as the final authority, the one who gave approval before a session could begin. The anonymity of the name added to the dread. Unlike Elias, Theo, or Nathan, real people with faces and addresses, the Curator had no identity, no digital footprint, no traceable location, and yet everything pointed back to him. He was the architect, the one who had created the rules and guided the others. The others may have carried out the acts, but the Curator had written the script. When forensic teams cross-referenced timestamps from the hard drives with digital server activity, a pattern emerged. Every time a video was uploaded to the dark web, a unique identifier in the code matched a server in Eastern Europe, a proxy relay used by a private hosting network known to law enforcement for distributing illicit content. Hidden behind that server was a single administrator account. It had only one login credential, and it used a ciphered key generated by a biometric scan. Whoever the Curator was, he didn't just rely on passwords or usernames. He used next-generation encryption tied to physical traits, iris scans, fingerprint keys, or voice activation. This wasn't the work of some amateur sadist. This was someone sophisticated, calculating, and dangerously well prepared. While efforts to locate Nathan Rourke continued, a breakthrough came unexpectedly. A woman in Kansas City, hundreds of miles from Cypress Falls, called in a tip. Her younger sister, a 24-year-old nursing student named Haley Brooks, had been missing for 2 weeks. Local authorities had initially treated it as a voluntary disappearance. Haley had recently dropped out of school, and there were rumors she was struggling with depression. but the sister insisted it wasn't like her. And now, after reading a blog post about Mallory Kline's case, she was convinced there was a connection. At first, the FBI wasn't sure what to make of the tip, but when Haley's social media accounts were analyzed, agents discovered a troubling detail. Her most recent photos included a man in the background, blurry, half-hidden, but a match to Theo Klein. The timestamp on the photo was dated 3 days before Haley went missing. Further investigation revealed Haley had been in contact with someone online who went by the username Artifice8. The messages were light at first, flirtatious even, but slowly they grew darker, more manipulative. The sender encouraged Haley to share her daily schedule, to describe her routines. He even convinced her to send a short video of her walking home from her campus late at night for a film project. That username was traced back to an IP address last logged in at the Woodgrove property. And the final message Haley received, just hours before she vanished, read, "You're ready now. He will see you." That he was believed to be the Curator. With this new information, the FBI expanded its focus. They began coordinating with international cybercrime units, pushing deeper into the dark web forums where the videos had first appeared. One agent, posing undercover, infiltrated a private chat group associated with the site that hosted the recordings. In that chat, a user named Red Halo emerged as the central figure, respected, feared, and revered by others. He spoke in cryptic language, made references to next-level reality art, and often ended his posts with the same phrase, "Only the chosen are preserved." It didn't take long to connect Red Halo to the Curator. A coordinated sting operation was launched across multiple countries. Servers were seized, accounts frozen, and dozens of forum members were arrested. But Red Halo remained elusive. His posts continued to appear, even as his suspected associates were taken down. He was mobile, constantly shifting devices, masking his location behind multiple relays and false signals. It was like chasing a shadow through a maze of mirrors. Then, in a sudden stroke of luck, Nathan Rourke was found. He had been living in a remote trailer park under a fake name, using cash and stolen IDs. His appearance had changed, hair dyed, weight lost, but the tattoos on his arms gave him away. When apprehended, he resisted briefly, but eventually gave in. During interrogation, Nathan revealed the final, horrifying layer. He confessed that the Curator wasn't a myth. He was real, and he had never met him. Everything had been done through encrypted messages, carefully structured protocols, and precise timelines. Even the planning of Mallory's abduction had been reviewed and approved by the Curator through a coded checklist. Nathan, Theo, and Elias had been his puppets, useful, disposable. They were told they were part of something revolutionary, something pure. In reality, they were just his front line, his test subjects. Nathan described how, after each session, they would upload the footage using strict rules. The edits had to follow the Curator's template. Music, transitions, runtime, all specified. Once uploaded, they were paid in cryptocurrency and then ordered to wipe all raw footage. But Nathan hadn't followed all the rules. He had saved some clips for himself, a digital trophy collection. That arrogance had left a trail. But Nathan also revealed something else, something worse. The Curator had a list. It wasn't just the folders found on the server. It was a master list, updated, maintained, and ranked. Victims were chosen based on compatibility, which included personal history, appearance, isolation, and routine. Mallory had been high on that list. So had Haley. But there were dozens more. Some already taken. Some marked for future sessions. Nathan didn't have access to the full list, only the portion relevant to his assignments. But he was certain of one thing. The Curator was still watching, still choosing, and still planning. Even as law enforcement made arrests, even as servers were shut down and videos deleted, a final message appeared on one of the underground sites. It was simple, terrifying, and direct. Nothing ends. Not yet. Not until the archive is complete. The message disappeared within hours. Back in Cypress Falls, a memorial for Mallory Kline was held quietly. Her family chose a modest ceremony. No cameras, no press, just friends, classmates, and the community she had grown up in. Her story had changed lives, opened eyes, and exposed a network that had thrived in darkness for too long. She fought, even in her final moments. Forensics had proven that. The DNA under her fingernail, the trace blood. That small but critical act had helped bring her killers into the light. But justice, while delivered to a few, still remained incomplete. The true architect was still out there, crafting his next sequence, scripting his next horror. And even as her town grieved, even as the world tried to make sense of what had happened, one truth remained unshakable. They did this to her for 4 hours before she passed away, and someone, somewhere, was preparing to do it again.